I want to tell you a little story about how the seeds of the heroine's journey were actually born many years ago. I'm at UCLA Film School and I graduate with honors. And the first script that I write is a big buzz around town. And at one point, I bring it to Warren Beatty at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So he's going to be reading the script. This is the first script that I've written. And so I'm kind of up in the clouds and practicing what I'm going to be saying on talk shows and things like that, and Academy Award speeches. I'm getting prepared well in advance. So the bad news was Warren said, it's a great script, but it's really not for me. Do you mind if I give it to my friend Steve McQueen? So I said, sure. But as things go, it went on, many meetings, and finally the film didn't get made, so I wrote another screenplay called The Great Charlatan. It was based on a true story about a fellow during the Depression who was performing an operation where he was transplanting male goat glands into men's scrotums for sexual rejuvenation, and he became multimillionaire. He had the largest radio station in the nation, and so on and so forth. Same thing happened. There was a lot of buzz with it. Clint Eastwood's company optioned it. We went through all kinds of development, and in the end, nothing happened. And at this point, I went into really a rather deep depression. And for some weeks, I couldn't write. I was totally steeped in self-pity. I didn't understand why life had to be so unfair and so on and so forth. And I really didn't know how I was going to move forward. And then this is how the whole idea of the heroine's journey was born. One night I had a dream. Now, have any of you ever had a dream that's so real, like a dream that you fell in love with somebody and you wake up and you have those feelings in your body that you fell in love? If anyone has had that dream, just raise your hand or nod your head. Yeah, thanks. So there's a wonderful mode of therapy called focusing, and focusing is about what's called the bodily felt experience. And so when you dream that you fall in love with someone, you wake up with that bodily felt experience. And what Keith and I have found over the years, that bodily felt experience is really what helps us resonate with the characters in our stories. And by resonating with the characters in our stories from our body wisdom, we're also resonating with the audience. And the journey that we go the journey we go on when we're writing our screenplays and making our films is a parallel emotional journey along with the characters in our story. And that's the same journey that the audience goes on. So after many weeks, I wake up one morning and I just feel fantastic. I think I was whistling for the first time in 3 months when I woke up, whistling a nice tune. And the depression had totally lifted. And the dream that I had was this. I was working for a company called Mediocre Movies. And it was so real. It was one of those like falling in love dreams. It was so real that I could see everything that was actually in the company. Like there was a Hollywood type sign, and the sign said in bright orange, it said, "Mediocre Movies, why settle for less?" And the whole mission statement of the company, and this is all, it's all about the heroine's journey. The mission statement of the company was, you do the best you can, but you have to enjoy the process of working with other people. You do the best you can, but you have to enjoy the process of working with other people. And then out of that came a slogan that also fits the heroine's journey, which I'll be getting to in a minute, which is, lower the bar, raise the quality. Lower the bar, raise the quality. What this dream was telling me, and has continued to tell me since film school, is that one thing that blocks creative flow is perfectionism. Has anyone had the experience of perfectionism getting in the way of what you're doing? Yeah. So that was the message that came from the dream, and I want to take a spin through a model for both the hero and the heroine's journey, and then I'm going to, in the time we have this morning, I just want to kind of lay out what are the main differences between the two journeys. So in our heroine's journey, both the hero's journey and the heroine's journey have a call to adventure. And my call to adventure was to go to UCLA and write these screenplays. So a call to adventure is something that in the inner world, and the heroine's journey is all about the inner world experience. It marks the awakening of the self. So you have some outer call to adventure, and the inner call to adventure is that you start to wake up inside. The next stage is called the meeting of the guide. Again, this is similar to the hero's journey. And the meeting of the guide represents your wise self at the end of the journey. The guide represents your wise self at the end of the journey. So this might be a mentor, or this might be the guy who's teaching you how to repair your Volkswagen. It doesn't have to be somebody involved with film or screenwriting, but it's somebody who understands both the day world and the night world. So the day world is our everyday waking world. The night world is the underworld, or the world of dream. And this is the world that we go deeply into in the heroine's journey. Now, once you start this journey, as I did, and I was moving towards being a successful screenwriter, you reach what are called the threshold guardians. Now, the threshold guardians appear to be antagonistic and intimidating. These are like kind of gargoyles you see on top of buildings, or fierce lions in front of a library. But in my case, the threshold guardians were the producers who wanted to make the movie but didn't make the film. And I was pretty much stuck moving into the next phase of both the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, which is called the descent phase into the road of trials. Sometimes the road of trials is called the spiritual labyrinth. Now, I want to just hit the pause button for a moment and start to talk about the main difference between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey. And the main difference, as I see it, is that in the heroine's journey, the day world very specifically is the world of the patriarchy. The day world is the male-dominated world based on chauvinism. Now, yes, we've made a lot of great strides towards diversity, but in our actual consensus reality, chauvinism is very much the way. And chauvinism is this ancient approach to men and women where the man represents the power and the woman represents the sexuality. And so what happens in the heroine's journey, which is very specific and different than the hero's journey, is that as a woman or as an artist, because the hero's journey and the heroine's journey is not gender specific, it applies to both men and women. But as a woman or as an artistic, creative man, in order to be successful in the day world, we tend to start out by using our masculine side in the male-dominated world. Is that starting to make some sense? So it's a patriarchy. To survive in the patriarchy, we need to use our outer power and strength to be successful. Now, what happens is that when we reach a level of success in this day world, or this day of the patriarchy, this is really where the heroine's journey begins, because by obtaining that kind of success, what tends to happen is that we have a feeling of emptiness inside of us. We may win awards, we may get a lot of approval, but there's a vacuous space inside of us. And this is really where the heroine's journey begins. So in a simple way, you can say the heroine's journey begins where the hero's journey ends. The hero's journey ends with outer success, but that outer success proves to be empty. And this is where that descent down into the underworld begins in the heroine's journey. Another thing I want to add about this is that because of the day world being a chauvinistic society, we can also say that women are born into rage. Is there a German word for rage? Yeah, what is it? Yeah, Wut? Yeah, it sounds like rage. So, because women are judged because of their gender when they're born into rage. And what rage is a fractured psyche. It's not something that goes away, it needs to be healed. And one of the main intentions of the heroine's journey is to heal that rage. Now, it's different for men. If you're a creative and sensitive man, men aren't born into rage because they're the right gender in a patriarchal society, but men learn rage when they're lied to about what it means to be a man. Men learn rage when they're lied to about what it means to be a man. So, as you can see with this heroine's journey, there is an outer quest and an inner quest, but it's much different than the hero's journey. Because as we're descending down into the underworld, in the heroine's journey, going into the night of the soul, that what we're suffering from is a disconnect with the feminine. In order to be successful in the outer male-dominated world, we're disconnecting from our feminine. And so the inner quest in the heroine's journey, you can say, is a quest to reconnect with the feminine, or reconnect with the divine feminine, the power of our imagination, the power of our creativity that we've separated from in order to survive. So this idea of the night of the soul, for me, in my journey when I was writing the night of the soul, was I was in this depression that I couldn't possibly get out of. And it's also sometimes referred to in mythology as the belly of the whale, being swallowed by a whale. Now, if you do further studies in this, what you can start to correlate, and I've realized this, I'm writing a film about a Czech psychiatrist named Stanislav Grof. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of him. He's one of the founders of transpersonal psychology. But a lot of this journey also kind of is parallel to the 4 basic perinatal matrices of being born. And in the belly of the whale, a lot of times there's this feeling of depression that comes from constriction and congestion. And that's because the woundedness that we've experienced in our lives, when we get wounded, we constrict around those wounds. And as we get older, there's a tendency to stay constricted around those wounds. We're repeating the same patterns. So when we get triggered and things are going wrong, and it feels like everything is falling apart, it's very easy to go in this night of the soul into a deep depression. So there's many causes of depression, but one of them is when your energy is depressed. So from the night of the soul, we move towards what's called the initiation. Now, Keith and I have had many teachers, and one of them who's had a big influence on us, in addition to Joseph Campbell, is a Renaissance woman named Jean Houston. And Jean Houston also brought the psychology of creative process into the mythic journey. And she called the initiation, there is a death and a rebirth that happens in the initiation, but she calls it a point of grow or die. That the initiation is when you face all of your shadow issues, but she said, in the initiation, you either grow or die. Now, in the heroine's journey, and we'll be getting into this in great detail in Berlin, showing a lot of film clips. We're just kind of giving you an overall view of it right now. But in the heroine's journey, in the initiation is when we reconnect with the feminine. And unlike the hero's journey, it's not an outer act of courage to defeat the Cyclops or defeat the dragon or whoever it is that represents a personification of your shadow, which is everything that we don't want to see or admit about ourselves. That in the heroine's journey, when we come to the point of initiation, it's not about outer action, it's about the act of receiving. outer action has left an emptiness inside. And in the heroine's journey, it's about the act of receiving, but it's about the act of receiving in a group or in a tribe or in a community. And so the hero's journey is about usually one man or one woman against a monster or a monstrous kind of force. The heroine's journey is really unusual in this way because when you come to that point of initiation, it's learning how to be a vessel and receive in a group. And the heroine becomes empowered then through the group consciousness. Through the group consciousness. And if any of you have ever kind of meditated in a group, it's almost always easier to meditate in a group. It's almost always easier to do things with a group of people. So, as I was saying, that there's two parts to the heroine's journey in a sense, and one of the part is this inner journey where in the initiation, something has to die for something new to grow. And what dies in the heroine's journey is who we think we are, or in this case, who we thought we are. And so the search in the heroine's journey is a search for who we are beneath who we think we are. It's a search for our authentic voice. It's a search for our authentic voice. And in finding that authentic voice in the initiation, in a group of like-minded people, where instead of doing together, everybody is being together. And this is the rebirth process. So we can say that the heroine's journey is a movement from being self-centered to being group-centered. It's a literal shift in our awareness, and it's a shift in our self-identity where we are identifying with our mental ego in the outer patriarchal world, but when we descend down, and like Inanna, when all the veils are unraveled, we come to a point to find out who we really are in the group. And so if we look at the overview of our heroine's journey, this word boon is an archaic word for gift. There's a wisdom that comes out of this initiation. And so in our descent down to find out who we really are, we have our initiation, we receive a gift. The gift that I receive, that I remind myself of every day, is to let go of perfectionism. My mentor, Erwin Perlman, has reminded me at least 100 times that judgment freezes reality. And this next movement, once you kind of get a sense of, better sense at least, of who you are, this whole next movement is an outer quest to find your tribe or community. Because this is an inner tribe or community. The night world or the underworld of the heroine's journey is something that takes place in the dream world or the world of our imagination, or as our teacher Jean Houston is starting to suggest, it's something that takes place in the quantum realm that is beyond time and space. So with the gift of wisdom then, we start this journey back to the day world, which is poetically called the magic flight. Now we've reconnected with the feminine. We're starting this magic flight back to the day world, and just as when we cross the threshold to the night world, we are faced with threshold guardians. Now, in the heroine's journey, the inner threshold guardians oftentimes are based on our self-limiting beliefs that are creating repetitive negative thought patterns. Does anyone ever have negative voices inside telling them that they're not good enough, they're not doing enough? Anybody out here ever? So this has been a lifelong quest for Keith and me, because you can meditate, you can say I'm thinking, you can do all these different kind of things, but in the end, where do these voices come from, and what is the function of them? Well, what we found so far is that these obsessive compulsive thought patterns that go over and over and over again, in one level, are the result of telling our mind to take care of our worries, fears, and anxieties. And the subconscious mind is not really wired to do that. So it keeps repeating them over and over and over again. So one thing that we've found is that in order to let go of these thoughts, we have to become inner spiritual warriors. And perhaps the biggest challenge for us as spiritual warriors, and I think the key to be able to then complete the heroine's journey, is really based on your courage to let go of blame. To let go of blame. Does anyone get really upset or irritated or tired and then start to blame the German Film Fund or blame, Barack Obama or, there's so many people and organizations and institutions to blame. I found the easiest thing to do is just blame everything on the Illuminati. It's like, that damn Illuminati is acting up again. So, in order to complete this journey and to move back into the day world, we face new trials. But another aspect of the heroine's journey that's different from the hero's journey is that the heroine's journey is holographic. All of these movements in the heroine's journey are all taking place at the same time. And one of the reasons for this is that in the realm of the imagination, it's really beyond time and space. So once you start to learn how to let go of blame, because if we're in blame, then we're in victim martyr role and it keeps perpetuating itself. When these thoughts start to happen, you need to tell your subconscious mind that that's not their job. The job of the subconscious mind is to create very clear goals and visions of what you want. So when the mind monsters are going, see if you're in blame. See if you can let go of blame. Just by being aware that you're doing it is going to slow these chattering monkeys down. But the intention of our subconscious mind is to create goals for us to follow. So you need to have courage to let go of blame, let go of complaining, and let go of self-pity. Because all of these things, blame, complaint, and self-pity, are going to keep us from bringing what we've learned in the underworld on this journey back to the day world. So, in the hero's journey, the completion is called the ritual kingship. But when we're looking at the heroine's journey, there are a couple terms that we borrow from the hero's journey that I think are more appropriate. And these two terms are the marriage with the goddess, and the atonement with the Father. The marriage with the goddess and the atonement with the Father. So in our initiation, we've experienced the marriage with the goddess. We've reconnected with the divine feminine. And the atonement with the Father is really based on that's not really enough. Once we've connected with the deeper feminine, we need to reintegrate the positive aspect of the masculine. All of this heroine's journey stuff really started many years ago, and one of Joseph Campbell's students, Maureen Murdoch, said, "Hey, this is great, but I don't think it really relates to women." And so she wrote a book called The Heroine's Journey that's still in print. She wrote a beautiful workbook about it where you can kind of learn. It's really a seminal book about all of this. But what she says in a very poetic way is that when you're coming back kind of empowered by the divine feminine, you need to reintegrate the masculine. And The archetypal personification she uses for that is, she calls it, you need to meet the man with heart. The man with heart, the man who is integrated his masculine and feminine side. And this is where the idea of atonement comes with the father. Because of the patriarchal world that we've all been born into, there needs to be some kind of forgiveness to move forward. Otherwise, it's too easy to stay in blame. And forgiveness is not forgiving what someone has done to you. Forgiveness is about understanding the why of what they've done. And so this idea of atonement or at-one-ment is, in the whole journey, there's the disconnect from the feminine to be successful in the outer world, the reconnect with the deeper feminine in the night world, and then coming back to the day world, we need to be able to reintegrate with the masculine. So this mediocre movies dream that I had really resulted in totally bottoming out, because after none of these projects worked, I wound up working as a bellman in a downtown Chicago hotel, and things were getting worse and worse. And by the way, if things are going bad, never say at least it can't get any worse than it is right now, because then you'll always find the new bottom. But one of the bellmen at the hotel invited me to a lecture to go to, and that lecture was with Joseph Campbell. And through the lecture with Joseph Campbell, I met my lifelong friend, Keith Cunningham, and we both started working with Joseph Campbell and Gene Houston.